Hi everyone, this is Abel, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna be talking about books set in a galaxy far, far away. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, especially space opera and epic fantasy, this is the perfect place for you. So consider subscribing, hitting the notification bells so that you can be notified every time I upload something new, and maybe leave a like. Remember, every interaction counts. So if you have suggestions and you have original and interesting takes about this video, comment down below. Of course, today we're talking about Star Wars books. And why? This is because I've been missing on those books. I know that many people, thousands, millions of people are in love with all that has something to do with Star Wars. And admittedly, I have always been more of a Star Trek guy. So I am by no means an expert in Star Wars lore in general. I have a general knowledge about it. I know the movies, I know the TV shows on Disney Plus, not all of them. For example, I have never been a fan of the animated series because I am a very visual person. I've been drawing all my life. I am an advertisement art director. I've been meddling with Photoshops for the better part of the last 20 years, and I really don't like that art style. I know it's a petty reason not to follow a show that by all means it is widely considered like something of the best stuff about Star Wars ever. So yeah, maybe one day it will change, but so I am no expert, but I want to change that. I want to know more about Star Wars, and a good way to know more about it, it's consuming the expanded media surrounding the TV shows and the films, of course. And now I have to give you a little bit of a context to let you know what I'm searching for and what I'm going to read, because Star Wars had a galaxy of stuff orbiting around the main media, around films and TV shows. And that's what I'm going to explain you in a bit. Of course, I'm going to say stuff that could be right. I've been doing my researches, but if I do something wrong, please comment down below. And if you want to help me through my journey and help me have the right suggestions about what to read and how to consume it, reading orders and all the rest, please comment down below. And please be kind. As far as I can tell, for about 2 decades or more, the only way to consume stories in the world of Star Wars, after the end of the 3rd movie in the original trilogy, it was to read books and comics set in the same universe. A few of those books and comics were sticking pretty close to the main cast and the original timeline of those movies, and many of those were settled many years before, and a few of those movies they continued the story of the main cast. In 2012, when Disney acquired they bought Lucasfilms, and by doing that they acquired the rights to everything about Star Wars, they decided, you know what? We don't care. Those everything that has been produced before the acquisition, it doesn't matter anymore. We're going to do our stuff, which can be understandable. At the time, they said that they were going to create a new universe surrounding the 2 original trilogies, the original trilogy and the prequel one, so that every single book, every video game, every comic book, they were really interconnected, and then they were going through the same story, a huge story that was spanning multiple medias. Because one of the criticism about the all the books, video games and stories produced before the acquisition, it was that there were contradictions, that sometimes a few stories were rewriting and changing the canon. Now, I don't know if that criticism is founded, it is how true it was, or if it was something marginal that really hardcore fans were complaining about, but it didn't change the grand scheme of things, or if it is a really legitimate criticism. I don't know, because I haven't read those books, but that was one of the main reasons that the story group at Lucasfilm were going for when deciding to create a new canon. So everything that was produced before 2012, it was renamed and rebranded as Legend, because even though Disney didn't care about those books, about the stories of those books, they care about the money they could do by selling those stuff, video games and books and comic books. So they continued to print and reprint those stories, selling them and labeling them as legends, like stories that may or may not happen, but they were not considered canon anymore. So if new books, new movies and new TV shows were going to cover the same time frame that were already being covered in those earlier stories, they were going to change things so that they have creative freedom to build new stories the way they seems to be thinking it was the best way possible. At the time, I was not that much concerned about it. As I told you, I have always liked and even loved Star Wars, but I have never been an expert. In a way, because in my teenage year and early 20s, it was very difficult to me, for me to put my paws on any kind of media about Star Wars, even videotapes, or DVDs. It was very hard. So I have no choice. It was much more easier to consume Star Trek because of the TV shows and reruns on the Italian channels. So, but it became a problem, that attitude to change the canon, a problem, when new movies and a new TV show were coming out, because I kept following a lot of YouTube channels where a lot of experts about Star Wars that were complaining, comparing the new canon, the new books, and the original books and comic books, covering the same time frames, saying the new canon from Walt Disney is worse compared to the original canon, which is now called Legends. So I became curious and more curious, and then the new trilogy happened. And we all know what we're talking about. You don't need me to say how bad it is. And I was sad because I was hoping to have a different outcome for the original cast. I wanted Han and Leia to be married and happy, have a bunch of kids. I wanted Luke to be a Jedi Master and rebuild the Jedi Academy. And we know that that didn't happen, actually. So I was really sad. Even being a casual fan, you can say, I could recognize how scorchingly painful it was to see those characters being handled that way. But now I have a chance. I want to see the live game elements, and I want to do a lemonade. I know there is a different outline, a different storyline about those same characters. They go through a very different life. They go through very different adventures that, as far as I can tell, are very much beloved and very well written. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read a different version for those characters, because I care about canon. I care about stories, interconnected stories, expanding universe, expansive universe, and I don't like the one we have now. And I know that we have tons and tons of novels and comic books set in that galaxy far, far away, called now Legends, and I was worried because I didn't know where to start. So I had read during those dark ages, dark years, when we had no movies for Star Wars before the prequel launched, and after actually, I had read a book from Drew Karpyshyn. I put the cover here because I don't remember the title. That's been more than 10 years ago, yeah, about 15 years ago. I have read The Truce at Bakura, and I have read, and I'm now in the process of reading the first book in the Thrawn trilogy. But let's go in order, and let's explain what I've been doing. I've gone to Reddit, of course, when I have questions, and I search for answers, and I've asked redditors, please help me find the right reading orders. I mainly care about the main cast, about what happens to Luke, Leia and Han after the end of the third movie in the original trilogy. And then I would like to read something about the expanded universe, something about the X-Wings pilots, because I know there's a huge story about that. And then I would like to read something about the kids, about this the two sons and one daughter of Han and Leia, and maybe something set many years ago, because one of my favorite stories and video games of all time is Knight of the Old Republic. So please help me. And they gave me the answers. So the overwhelming consensus is that I should start with the original Thrawn trilogy. And yes, I have been doing that, reading the first book, Heir to the Empire, for a couple of years. So I started to read it, and then I hit a moment when I felt that I was not interested anymore. Not in the book and in the story, which was pretty compelling and pretty great, but there was this turmoil around the sequel trilogy after the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, and I was bitter, and I told myself, if the people creating this story and creating this universe, they don't care about canon, they don't care about characters and character development, they don't care about giving us fun and exciting, compelling and coherent stories, why should I care? And in a way, I still feel that way. But then, as I told you, I started to look at it in a different way, as a chance actually to follow those characters along and reading better stories about them. So I decided to start with that trilogy, the original Thrawn trilogy, that was published a few years later, the last movie in the original trilogy, and it follows pretty closely Luke, Han and Leia. And it was a chance for me, a chance to stay with them and enjoy that and their story, and in a way to consume a story where they had a better life than what we had in the movies. That's one of the main reasons. And of course, because they're good books, everybody says that those are good books, especially because they introduced this very important character, which is the Grand Admiral Thrawn, which has been resurrected and it's been reincorporated in the canon now with the TV shows about the Mandalorian and Ahsoka. In a very questionable way, because everybody says that the Grand Admiral Thrawn that we have in the TV shows is a pretty uninteresting and maybe a little bit dumb character. And I can absolutely tell that I think they're right. Because even if I still didn't finish the first book in the original Thrawn trilogy, what I have read about Thrawn, the kind of person and the character that he is in that first half of a book that I have read, it is endlessly more interesting, infinitely more compelling than what we had on the TV show. So this first trilogy is about that, Han, Luke and Leia facing this new threat, the Grand Admiral Thrawn and his fleet that, as far as I can tell, they were being deployed far, far away from the original galaxy from Star Wars. So after the fall of the Empire, Grand Admiral Thrawn, he came back and decided to seize power and to destroy the Republic. And yeah, that's the original story. I know that Tomithy Zahn wrote another 2 books in the same timeline about Grand Admiral Thrawn, and then that he wrote other 6 books with the new canon when after Disney bought the whole things. And it looks like he slightly changed the origins of Grand Admiral Thrawn without actually contradicting what he did with the Legend books. But I don't know if I'm interested in reading those. Maybe one day, if I complete this trilogy and I feel like the writing style of Tomithy Zahn is so amazing, I can live without knowing all the rest about the Thrawn trilogy, I will try and read those. But for now, my focus is on this trilogy, because it helps me in a way heal after the burning and the scars I have because of the new trilogy. Then everybody says that I should read Kenoby, which is a standalone novel about Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first years after he landed on Tatooine and decided to live his secluded life watching for Luke from far away. This is interesting for me for the same reasons why the Thrawn trilogy is interesting for me, because the TV shows on Disney Plus about Obi-Wan Kenobi was simply bad, really, really bad. The pacing, cinematography, the story, the character development, and it broke canon. It actually broke canon. And I'm an author myself. Canon is everything. Because if you casually go back and change the origins of your character, you can do that if you're an author, of course. I can do that if I want. But I have to be very careful, because it's like going in an house and taking out a pillar of that house and expecting it to stay and to continue to be solid. It doesn't work that way. So anyway, I'm ranting now. So after the 3 books in the original Thrawn trilogy and after Kenobi, everybody has been suggesting me to read at least the first 4 books in the X-Wing series. There are about Wedge Antilles, which was one of the pilots mentioned, actually one of the characters from the original trilogy. And I know absolutely nothing about this story. I just like the aesthetics of it. Having a kind of a Top Gun story set in the Star Wars universe is endlessly fascinating for me. This series is actually very long. I don't know exactly how many books. Much more than 4. But they say that those first books are kind of a completed stories, and then if I enjoy it and want to go on, I will have plenty more books about it. Then they say I should read the Darth Bane trilogy, and about this I know very little too, but I want to change that. And this has been set many years before the original trilogy and all the other books that I've been mentioning. Then there's a trilogy about Han Solo, and I would say that the Han Solo movie, the prequel, was not that bad. I think that many people treated too harshly. It was not mind-blowing by any means, but it was a fun flick. But as far as I can tell, the story that we have in the Legends about the origins of Han Solo are very, very different from what happens in the movie. And I'm curious, I want to know more about Han Solo, because yeah, it's such fascinating, so fascinating character. So yeah, I'll give them a try. Then a lot of people suggest me to read Shatterpoint, which is a prequel novel set during the Clone Wars about Jedi Master Mace Windu, which is such an amazing character, so fascinating, and that had so little screen time in the original prequel trilogy. Yeah, it is amazing how little we knew about him and how fascinated we were about that character that went off in such a badass way. I'm in awe of what we had in that original trilogy. And then, as I told you, I want to stick close to the Skywalker family. I know that there are multiple series about Luke and I'm sorry, about Han and Leia's sons. Yeah, that should be funny if you know something about the relationship between Luke and Leia, especially a kiss that we had in the second movie. Yes, okay. Why am I laughing about this so hard? Anyway, Han and Leia, they had 3 children, and 2 boys and a girl. And I know that there are multiple series following them as they had been training to become Jedi themselves. Now, my only doubt is, were those story completed? So did we had a overarching plot being fulfilled before Disney acquired the rights? What happened to Luke, Han, Leia and the boys at the end? Does it end in a cliffhanger? Does it end in a satisfying way? Will we ever know? Probably not. Because the new canon basically cancelled everything about it. But I will be happy just finishing that original Thrawn trilogy. I want for Luke, Leia and Han to live a different life, to go through a different story, to have different adventures. That's why I'm sticking to the legends. I don't care about the new canon, I don't care about the new books, I don't care about the new movies. The only new stuff produced during the Disney era for Star Wars and Lucasfilm are Rogue One, Rogue One, Rogue One, and then Endor, Endor and Endor, and nothing else. That's all I've got for you today. Of course, please help if you have read anything from the expanded universe, especially the legends for Star Wars. Tell me everything about it. Let's be friends. Give me your suggestions. Read those comments down below. Of course, you can find me on X, you can find me on Instagram, you can text me and send me a DM wherever you want. I will gladly reply. Of course, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, especially space opera and epic fantasy, this is the perfect place for you. So consider subscribing, maybe commenting, ringing the notification bell so you will be alerted every time I post something new. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying till the end of this video, and I hope that you will have time and the desire to watch a couple of more videos. You'll see they're here, right here. Thank you again. I'll see you soon. Bye.